He wrote how he had heard the French composer Jean-Philippe Rameau and an old relative of the French ambassador at Venice testify to having known Saint-Germain in 1710, when he had the appearance of a man of 50 years of age. Eternally middle-aged, ever charming, finely dressed, knowledgeable and princely, the Count of Saint-Germain's reputation as an omnipotent immortal enthralled European high society, with even Voltaire writing, albeit tongue-in-cheek, that Saint-Germain is a man who never dies and who knows everything. As theories of the mysterious man's origin abounded, attention naturally turned to how it was possible that he had defied aging. Something of particular interest is how, wherever the man went, he established laboratories. When he arrived in Paris in 1757, introduced to the French king by one of his ministers, Saint-Germain was not merely well received, enjoying the personal protection and friendship of Louis XV and his family, but was also given a suite of rooms at Château de Chambord. This included a laboratory fitted up for experiments, which attracted a group of students eager to learn about the Count's exceptional scientific knowledge. According to the Countess of Genlis, who wrote about Saint-Germain after knowing him as a child, he would never consent to give up his secret, but was happy enough to prove his excellence. On one occasion, the king is said to have ordered a middling-sized diamond which had a flaw in it to be brought to him. After having it weighed, Louis XV explained to the Count that in its current condition, the diamond was valued at 6,000 livres. Without the flaw, it would be worth 10,000. Was the Count, so the king asked, able to make him 4,000 livres richer? After examining the jewel, Saint-Germain is said to have responded that it may be done, and that he would return it to the king in a month's time. When he did, the flaw was gone. Weighing the same as it had done a month earlier, the diamond was now worth 10,000 livres. Overcome with surprise, the king kept the gem as a curiosity. The king kept the gem as a curiosity. Such a feat, despite its astonishing nature, was said to have been commonplace for the Count of Saint-Germain. Casanova informs us that he had a mastery over nature and could melt diamonds, and the 19th century occultist Eliphas Lévy remarked in his writings that the Count was said to have known how to fuse diamonds, so that there was no trace of the operation, and was also capable of imparting greater brilliance and ductility to copper, an invention which would have made the fortune of whoever devised it. And indeed, the mysterious Count must have been wealthy. According to various contemporary descriptions, he dressed simply, but with taste, with his only luxury being the large number of finest diamonds with which he was fairly covered, on each of his fingers, set in his snuff boxes and watches, and even on his shoe buckles, with one observer remarking that an expert on precious stones had estimated the diamond-encrusted buckle's value to be a tremendous 200,000 francs, some $30,000, before one even begins to consider the price distortion caused by over 200 years' worth of inflation. Fascinatingly, despite all of these jewels, there are no known records of the Count having possessed a bank account, or having any acknowledged source of income, beyond, of course, the speculation of alchemy. And yet, for all of this, one can argue that the Count of Saint-Germain's most valuable possession was something other than his vast gem collection. After all, his alchemy is claimed to have been the source of his longevity. Occupied with the purification, maturation, and perfection of minerals, alchemy is a controversial branch of natural philosophy which has been practiced for centuries. oftentimes illegal for the threat it posed currency if alchemists were able to transmute, as is typically claimed, base metal into gold. The esoteric science's ultimate aim is the uncovering of the prima materia, that primitive first matter required for the alchemical magnum opus, the creation of the legendary philosopher's stone. With it, one would conceivably be able to, alongside transmuting metals, create the elixir of life, and thus never die. With his knowledge of perfecting diamonds, of changing copper, and his ability to remain frozen in time as a 45-year-old man, it is said that the Count of Saint-Germain possessed this incredible alchemical artifact. Returning to the story of the Countess von Georgi, one uncovers something once again peculiar. Describing her encounters with Saint-Germain in Venice to Madame de Pompadour, the by-then old woman revealed that she had once received from the Count a remarkable elixir. It had, so the Countess alleged, for fully a quarter of a century preserved unaltered the youthful charms she possessed at 25. Infinitely curious, Madame de Pompadour is said to have subsequently conducted her own investigations, which revealed from the mouths of several elderly gentlemen who had known von Georgi when she was younger that it was true. The youthful appearance of the Countess had indeed stood still for a length of time. Further references to the existence of some sort of magical elixir come from Russia, where Saint-Germain, active in the 1760s and 1770s under a different alias, is said to have given an elixir for long life to a prince. It was, however, in northern Germany that the Count supposedly conducted a large portion of his alchemical experiments. Travelling there in 1779, he befriended the Landgraf Karl von Hessen-Kassel, a princely nobleman and respected general who had a keen interest in mysticism and was a member of several secret societies. After impressing von Hessen-Kassel with his charming company and extensive gem collection, Saint-Germain was given a laboratory, where the two men proceeded to meet often and perform many alchemical experiments together. According to the Landgraf's cousin, not merely did they work together on all sorts of hidden arts, they communicated with ghosts and supernatural beings also, with these entities said to appear at Saint-Germain's command. Such would be utterly unbelievable were it not corroborated by so many other writers at the time, including Karl von Hessen-Kassel himself, who wrote of the Count fondly in his personal memoirs. And yet, it was not to last. According to local records, the register of the St. Nikolai Church in Eckernford, the Count of Saint-Germain died on the 27th of February, 1784. Only a few days later, he was buried, and then the following month, his possessions auctioned. And so, the man was not immortal. Or was he? For despite there being a record of his death, many at the time utterly asserted the Count was alive. She knew Saint-Germain well, having known him during the time of Louis XV, and later when the Count returned to France to give a warning to the old king's successor. Received by Marie Antoinette upon the Countess's recommendation, Saint-Germain told the young queen that certain elements in society would overthrow the monarchy, and even described how in future the axe of the executioner would bring an end to royalty in France. It was his intention, so he claimed, to point out to her the dangers which threatened her crown, in the hope that bloodshed could be avoided. And yet, as history so terribly records, avoidance was not to be. Marie Antoinette and her husband, Louis XVI, were executed, and Saint-Germain's prophecy realized. The most incredible part is yet to come, however. According to the Countess of Ademar, the Count of Saint-Germain was present at the execution of the French Queen, some 9 years after his own recorded death. Not merely that, the Countess, in her memoirs, alleged that she saw Saint-Germain a further 5 times before her own demise in 1822. On each occasion, the man was said to have been totally unaged. Yet another report of the immortal Count came from Jean-Baptiste Aliette, a French occultist who popularized tarot divination to a wide audience, who also claimed to have been a pupil of Saint-Germain. A year after the Count's supposed death, Aliette and he are said to have lunched together, with Aliette stating that the Count was 325 years old at the time. Remarkably, this age is consistent with the one alleged by Casanova.
Look at the difference, and that is just with one coat. Toothpaste Better Than Sex is the iconic pink mascara that changed everything. This mascara is #1 in America.
Remarkably, this age is consistent with the one alleged by Casanova. For the next 200 years, the Count of Saint-Germain can be traced in and out of history. Known by various different names, including Major James Fraser in the 19th century, he is claimed to have continued on, socializing and experimenting, occasionally influencing society from the shadows. In the closing of the decades of the 1800s, Helena Blavatsky, the Russian mystic who co-founded the Theosophical Society, is yet another who claimed to have met him. Describing him as a master of ancient wisdom, she alleged that he was a physical incarnation of an enlightened, disembodied being who traveled from a higher realm of spiritual awareness to guide the spiritual development of mankind. There is even a photograph of Blavatsky with 3 so-called masters, one of whom the caption labels as Lord Saint-Germain. It was in the 1970s, however, that Saint-Germain supposedly made his most well-disseminated resurgence, this time in the guise of Richard Chanfrey, a Frenchman who claimed to be able to transmute lead into gold. Far from being a sleight of hand or any other form of trickery, this act was claimed to have been a true alchemical feat. Certainly, in a 1972 documentary, he appeared to provide a demonstration. Given lead wire by a film crew, he instructed for it to be dipped into powder which he had supplied. The powder, so he claimed, was what we know as the Philosopher's Stone. With Chanfrey not touching the equipment at any point during the experiment, only providing verbal guidance to the interviewer, the lead was then placed in a crucible and heated up. Cooled down and removed, it was indeed now gold. Verified by experts to have been the precious metal, the gold wire was also found to be the precise same dimensions as the original lead. And yet, as impressive as this on-camera demonstration may have been, it can be said that the interview quickly runs away from the viewer, testing our credulity to the utmost. Despite appearing cool and calm throughout, the claims made by Chanfrey are fantastical. Claiming to be 17,000 years old at the time of the interview, he states that he is the same Count of Saint-Germain who was friends with Louis XV and Madame de Pompadour. Not merely that, he then, on camera, proceeds to introduce an unspeaking woman as the ageless Madame herself, also claiming to have kept the old king youthful and living in luxury in the south of France, where they holiday together and visit nightclubs. And if all of this was not unbelievable enough, he goes on to claim that his lineage comes from Atlantis, that there is a destroyed base on Mars belonging to his people, that he has telepathic communication with 11 other masters, 4, as the interview is happening, is due to meet with Nicholas Flamel, lives underneath a cathedral, operates an antique shop, is the last of the Knights Templar, has a 17-kilogram pet beetle, and is kept well enough in financial security by the Rosicrucian Order, which he founded. This he explained while standing in front of the Palace of Versailles, flashing what he alleged was 1,000,000 francs in a brown envelope. Undoubtedly, it is difficult to regard this whirlwind of information with anything other than extreme skepticism. And yet, Richard Chanfrey aside, the legend of the Count of Saint-Germain is rich and at times tantalizingly convincing. With so much testimony and historical record, one's imagination truly can run. When people, both present day and in the past, have tried to explain the Count and his professed immortality, all manner of theories have been presented. In addition to the skeptical cries of fraud, there are assertions that he was a time traveler, that he was an alien being, that he was an enlightened master of ancient wisdom or elder brother of the human race, or that he was the greatest alchemist to have ever lived. Or indeed lives, for if the legend is true, then the Count of Saint-Germain may very well still walk among us, generating wonder and mystery the same as he always has. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do let me know by leaving a comment and of course subscribing for more of the paranormal. Equally, don't forget to check out my code SCHOLAR for $10 off your Hunter Killer Murder Mystery Box subscription. The link is in the description. Thank you again. Until next time.
And so it is.